Children overlooking the Delaware River in Philadelphia.
Over there and tell about that.
Landing, and this is the boat Moshulu, which is the largest steel sailing vessel in the world. And what you see down there is a ship called the Gazela. It was built in 1898 in Portugal. It is the oldest wooden sailing vessel still in use in America. This is Penn's Landing. This was an area that was rebuilt by the city of Philadelphia for the bicentennial in 1976. What you see is the Ben Franklin Bridge, which I think we're going to cross today. Go over to Camden, New Jersey. And the hotel where we stay is right about right there behind the bridge. Okay, we're now going over to Independence Hall. We're at the beginning of our tour. It's going to be a self-walking tour into the historical section of Philadelphia, cradle of American history, where it all began. Interior of the First Bank of the United States. Some exhibits.
By the Carpenters Company, which meets here 4 times a year. The National Park Service maintains the grounds.
This is Carpenter's
The building
Hall.
is open to the public 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., but closed on Monday.
The first Continental Congress met in 1774.
Or the visitor center, or exact time and date if you're visiting in January or February. With your back to Carpenter's Hall, the building on your left is New Hall. A reconstruction of the building built by the
This is the Marines building, now a Marine Museum. See original cobblestones. Carpenter's Hall.
Whitney?
They are the Marine Museum and Carpenter's Hall is what you're seeing. Part of the original cobblestone. This is part of the Commons.
Whoa!
The garden beside Todd House.
Show!
This is still that little Todd House. Pump. It's tall. tree in my way, I can get the rest of the tower now.
A bird?
And Beth. Hall and giving you a view of the carriages that you can rides that you can take. Trying to fade it and turn around. Independence Hall from the front. It's not the view that you always see. You always see the one that I started with in the back. This is the entrance, however. And just down the narrow Philadelphia street right in front of it. On the wall it says Independence Hall, State House of Pennsylvania, the birthplace of the United States of America.
Look at the boat. This must have been the boat. This is just this place.
Now this room's affected by a great diversity of persons. Why are you talking about two of them though? The first one is King John, who in the year 1215 AD signed the Magna Carta in Runnymede, England. That's a document that very much affects you to this very day, where it gives you the right to have a trial by jury of your equal peers and also due process of law. The other person is William Penn. As a young man, he had lots of trouble with the law. He often found himself in a courtroom explaining why he was a Quaker. He was a very outspoken and boisterous person, and he was often thrown in jail for contempt of court. So when he comes here to establish Pennsylvania as his holy experiment, he changed things around the courtroom. He made it more fair, more open, and accessible to the public. And in that he was successful. That's why you open archways behind you. They allow the public to come in and stand where you are now. And generally every day this gallery was packed. Why? Well, first off, people came here for entertainment. They came here for a good laugh or to see the sensationalism of trial. Amazingly, we do the same things today. Now, most of us don't travel to courtrooms. We don't have to. It's all provided for us in a little box we have at home called a TV. Night Court, LA Law, Judge Watler's Court, Divorce Court, People's Court, Matlack, Barry Mason. The list goes on and on. We love trials. But on a more serious note, they came here for educational purposes. They had the schools to go to that you enjoy today. They had to learn from life experiences. They had to learn from other person's mistakes. And where better in a courtroom than learn how to settle when they break the law. Now, as sinister as this room may look, it is a very fair room. It's also a room that's structured by power and authority in the objects that are presented here. At the very base of the power are you folks, the people. That's only natural. And what it does, it works its way forward here to the room into a gentle curve. The first object we encounter is this. It is called the prisoner's dock. Now, if you're the person standing in here, you do have many rights. First off, in the common law system, you are innocent till proven guilty. You also have the right to have a trial of your equal peers, the juries. The juries sat here in these boxes you see off to the side, both the grand and petit juries. And perhaps most important, you have the right to represent yourself, to be your own lawyer. Or if you didn't wish to do that, someone would be appointed for you. For obvious reasons, these disappeared in American courtrooms by the early 19th century, even though these are only meant to be a display case for the person who is on trial, the accused person. I've been told, though, that in Great Britain, if you break the law today, you expect to stand in one. They still use them over there. That's part of their system. Another tradition from England is this one large round table, the common lawyer's table, where both the prosecution and the defense would sit together. Again, for obvious reasons, we do not allow lawyers to sit together. to be busy hitting each other during a trial. Doesn't seem quite right. Above them empowered the judges at the bench area. And here in Pennsylvania, you had anywhere from 1 to 5 judges, depending on how serious that crime was. And crimes ranged anywhere from excessive gossiping, where one judge would hand down a fair sentence, to crimes that were punishable by death, such as murder and counterfeiting, in which 5 judges would do that. Those judges must receive their authority from somewhere. It comes from that painting you see above the judge's bench. That is one of 3 original objects we have here in this building, the only one though you see here in this room. That is the coat of arms of the state of Pennsylvania, put there in 1785. But prior to that being here, remember, Pennsylvania is a colony of Great Britain. You would have had another symbol of authority there, that of kings. And perhaps the most famous coat of arms to hang there prior to that painting was that which belonged to King George III. But mysteriously, on July the 8th, 1776, that coat of arms was ripped off that wall. I wonder why. Discussing that in a few moments. But higher above the authority of kings and governors is that statue, the Statue of Justice. She is blindfolded so she cannot be corrupted. In her one hand she holds a scale, used to balance the evidence fairly. And the other hand is a very large sword, used to administer swift punishment for those who are indeed proven guilty here in this fair courtroom. That is the ultimate authority here in this room, and that's what you look for when you walk into any courtroom. Are there any questions at all before we move on? They occurred here. And the first one gets started in 1775. In the first year of the war here in North America, we are fighting for king and country. We are fighting for King George III. Who are we fighting against? Must be someone. Yes, it is the true tyrants of Great Britain, the British Army and the British Parliament. They are the ones who are taking away our rights granted to us as free English subjects. It's exactly what we are in 1775. And would King George III do something about it? We want him to go to Parliament, address our grievances to them, and force Parliament to change their policies against us here in North America. Well, King George III does not wish to become involved. One reason is he feels that Parliament is the ultimate form of government ever created by human beings. Therefore, you leave it alone. You do not tamper with it. You keep your hands out of politics. But perhaps the most important reason why he does not wish to anger Parliament is the fact that he receives an allowance from them. It's like a paycheck. It allows him to enjoy the finer things in life. And would you be happy if someone took your paycheck away from you? No? Well, the king is thinking about that. And that's why early in 1776, he would declare the colonies in a state of rebellion. And in June of 76, Mr. Richard Henry Lee from Virginia will stand up and make this famous resolution of independence. Enough is enough, it's time to break away. And he will use these very words. That these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. That's a wonderful phrase. We need something to back it up. So a committee of 5 men is established. Their job is to write a document which gives reasons why we should break away from Great Britain. One of the men in the committee is Thomas Jefferson, who eventually ends up writing that very document. Early in July, the famous votes are taken here in this room. And on July 2nd, Mr. Lee's resolution is approved. And that's when we officially become the United States of America. That is our birthday, July the 2nd, 1776. Do we celebrate it? No. For some reason, we're always 2 days late. It's not our fault, for we are indoctrinated to celebrate the 4th of July. The reason why is on that day here in this room, Jefferson's document is approved, the Declaration of Independence, which, remember, gave reasons why we broke away from Great Britain. On July the 8th, the document is read to the public for the first time out here in the square at high noon. Remember what else happened on July the 8th? In the courtroom. Yes, that's when the coat of arms disappeared. The reason why is men got excited about what they heard, rushed into that room, ripped down the king's coat of arms, dragged it through the streets of Philadelphia, and that night they burned it. Making it a treason. They will be joined by 56 other men 1 month later. The Declaration is finally signed here in this room on August the 2nd. Folks missed it by 1 day. Okay, 213 years ago yesterday. And it's a very solemn moment here in this room. Those men were thinking about the future of possibly hanging off the end of an oak tree. Remember, they are committing treason. They are signing their own death warrant. That seems more fair. Anyone here from New York, Pennsylvania, or Virginia like that idea? It's not very fair. very hot and humid summer here in this room. And these windows were generally kept closed and these doors were locked, or these were considered secret sessions. Imagine being in this room with this many individuals and not being able to enjoy the central air conditioning that we have now. It's not going to be fun. Well, finally, Roger Sherman from Connecticut will offer the great compromise, bringing together the two plans, creating the Congress that we know of today, with one house based on population, the other house based on equal representation, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So by the 17th of September, 1787, the delegates will come up here and sign that Constitution to send out to the individual states to ratify. This is the second of our original objects here in this building, the very inkstand used to sign the Constitution. It is also the same inkstand that was here 11 years before when men pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors as they committed willful treason against King George III in signing the Declaration of Independence. Two famous documents signed from that one inkstand. Behind is the last of our original objects here in this building, the very chair used by Mr. Washington as he presided over the convention. It is famous for the fact of what Mr. Franklin will say about the cardinal here at the top. It shows that the sun. Now, Mr. Franklin and the men here in this room are very perplexed and confused and worried as to the job they're doing. They're wondering if they're doing the right thing by scrapping the old government and making a new one. There's a great burden and responsibility placed upon their shoulders, the weight of 4.5 million citizens of this country who are demanding a government that's going to work. Well, Franklin will use this chair as a symbol of what they're doing here, where he's wondering what direction that sun is going in. Is it a sunrise or a sunset? And what he's really saying to himself is, if this government fails, it's a sunset. But when the sun goes down, it's complete darkness, and for us that means ruin. 8 years of war have been for nothing. We are complete failures. But just perhaps maybe this government might work as the sun rise, a new day, a new beginning for our country, then we have been successful. Well, Franklin will debate this in his head for the 4 months that he's here, and will give his final answer on September the 17th. Yes, it is indeed a rising and not a setting sun. For a while, they still had their doubts about the document they made. They thought at best it would last to the year 1810. That's all they gave it to. And yet it's quite amazing. Think about the clothing they wore back then, the food they ate, the customs and traditions they enjoyed with friends and family. Now those things are different from what we do today. And yet the document they made in their time, they only gave 20 years to work, is going into its 3rd century and doing quite well. It's been called the Miracle of Philadelphia. And why is it a miracle? Well, these men were just human beings and a government for human beings. And not just for their generation, but also for future generations. So they attempted to make a document that was flexible and enacting was successful, and that is the miracle of our Constitution, it being flexible. Are there any questions at all before we go upstairs? Yes?
This is the room I didn't get to film while he was talking. This is where the Declaration of Independence was discussed, signed, and 12 years later, the Constitution of the United States was done and written here. George Washington's chair. It's an original piece of furniture, and so is that inkwell.
But they were hoping that others were here. But they died for something they believed in. It's often overlooked, the fact that human beings died here. The reason why they died here, we have a variety of reasons. On one side of the coin, you have individuals dying for the words that are put into a document made downstairs. They're dying for the very survival of a new country, protected from foreign invasion. And on the other side of the coin, you have two types of individuals. You have those who are dying for God, His most protected majesty and country, the protection of the mighty empire they have gained over the last 20 years, to bring the bad children back to the fold, to give them a good spanking. And then the last individual, well, he's the one that should truly be pitied, for he has no reason to be here. His loyalty is to princes, the Germanic states, but his services have been sold abroad. I'm referring to German mercenaries, British soldiers, and American soldiers that died here. And why are they dying here in this building? Well, the British Army in the fall campaign of 1777 captures Philadelphia. They hold it for 9 months. And during that time, there are many famous battles that we associate with our history classes. Brandywine, Paoli, Germantown, the siege of Fort Mifflin and Fort Mercer, all occurred during this time period. There's wounded soldiers that need attention. And therefore, all government buildings produce hospitals and prisons. This building was no exception. And immediately after those battles, the screams of men were echoed through this hallway as they're being tended to by 18th century standards of medicine. Barbaric by our standards, but it's the best they knew at their time. And those who survived their wounds were placed here in this building to recuperate. Americans stayed here on the second floor. This became their prison. Now on the first floor, they built barracks. They built bunk beds in the courtroom and the assembly room. That was the place where the British Royal Artillery slept. That was their way of guarding the Americans up here on the second floor, And those who did not survive, well, had to be buried. There's a convenient burial ground on a block southwest of here. And some of you might have already seen it today. It's where the tomb of the unknown soldier revolution is. He is there to represent the thousands of individuals who are buried in that city block. A greater majority of them are men who died here in this building. So that's what he is there for, to represent those men. And perhaps maybe this is the most important part of Independence Hall, where human beings make the ultimate sacrifice, putting words to work. Words out of the Declaration of Independence, words out of the mouth of their kings and monarchs. And it is very important. It's something that we should not forget. But this room has also seen brighter sides as well. That's why we have a table arrangement here and the harpsichord at the end of the room. Well, this was meant for parties and celebrations. And also the second floor, you would have found the governor of this Commonwealth. He used that room right there. You'll be seeing that in a few short moments. Pennsylvania was very unique for its time. It was a very thriving colony because of what William Penn had allowed to happen here. He said if you believe in one God, one maker, one creator, you come to this colony and worship any way you please. That's a 1701 Charter of Privileges. Well, that brings a lot of people here. Now, Maryland allowed people to go to her colony, but you had to be Catholic. That was her form of religious tolerance. Tolerance for Catholics. In New England, it was tolerance for Puritans. The rest of the colonies was tolerance for the Church of England. That's the way things were established. But here in Pennsylvania, anyone can come. And perhaps that's why Philadelphia becomes the second largest English-speaking city in the world, rivaled only by London. It's the cultural hub of the colony. It's the place to be while here in North America. Now, with that great variety and diversity of persons, we also have problems. Conflicts of culture and religion, also problems with Indians and settlers. And the Quaker government has struggled for many years to solve these problems. For the majority of the time, they were unsuccessful. And that's why the state of Pennsylvania is established in 1776, overthrowing the Penn family. And Benjamin Franklin was elected the first president, or basically governor of this Commonwealth. And he used that room as his office. Benjamin Franklin has a very interesting statement I wish to share with you as we finish up, where he will tell the delegates downstairs in 1787 that they have a republic if they can keep it. Think about those words. He's talking about you. And our government isn't instilled with objects. It's not this building. It's not the Liberty Bell across the street. It's not the inkstand you saw downstairs. It's not even the piece of paper in the National Archives. These are national treasures, but they're also objects. Objects come and go. People are always here. Remember, it's people who made those objects what they are. Those objects are here to remind us of those people and what they did 200 years ago. And our government is passed on through people, like a legacy or a heritage. The government you have now, you receive from your parents. In time, you pass it on to your children. That is what makes any government successful, is the people are willing to pass it on to future generations. And perhaps Abraham Lincoln describes our government best in November of 1863 while here in Pennsylvania. He will say we're a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Describes our essence of what we really are. So, Franklin said in 1787, I say to you today, you have a republic if you can keep it. I'll leave you with that thought. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be glad to help you. Otherwise, this is the end of our tour. You're free to roam around here at the second floor. When the harpsichord music stops, well, that's your signal to leave the second floor because another tour will be coming up.
It was an amazing tour. And the harpsichord. upstairs in Independence Hall. This is a room off of the main gallery where our tour just ended.
Committee of the Assembly Chamber.
Read it to me. What is it?
Committee of the Assembly Chamber.
Okay. Committee of the Assembly Chamber.
That's the thing right here, Dad.
Those are rifles. There's building. Tour's about ready to end. They're about ready to chase us out. Gorgeous.
C'è la presa.
Independence Hall and surroundings. We're just about ready to go in to see the Liberty Bell.
Okay, folks, I'd like to welcome all of you to the Liberty Bell Pavilion. My name is Matt, and I'm a ranger here at Independence National Park. I'm glad to see you all here today. Before I get started, I'm going to ask a question. How many people have seen this Liberty Bell before here? Let's see a show of hands. Oh, good. A fair amount of you. Good. Well, that just proves that this bell keeps going. We still get people coming back to see it, so they still view this as pretty important. And the way that I view this bell is that this bell became, over the years, to various people around this whole world, became a kind of a folk hero to them. They viewed this bell as very important as a symbol of liberty, and it became this role of a kind of a folk hero. This bell was made back in Sinclair, and it lasted about 90 years or so before it cracked right here. See, this is the first crack here. Actually, it would have been a hairline crack, but in 1846, they tried to repair that crack by drilling it wider, a method called stop drilling. It's actually what you're looking at here. So when you look at it, you can see the grooves in there from the drilling. That's the repair. And on February the 23rd of 1846, they rang the bell in celebration of George Washington's birthday, and it cracked for a second time. Starts right above this first crack, runs through the word end, all the way around the side and up to the crown of the bell. It's just a hairline crack. It's not all that noticeable. It doesn't look all that bad. But it's that crack there that signals the Liberty Bell. So this bell has not been rung since 1846. But about the same time as this bell cracked, people began to look at this bell as the Liberty Bell, as a symbol of liberty. And as they viewed it as such, it kind of became a sort of folk hero to them. They began to view this bell as being very important and kind of a guide in matters concerning liberty. Because this bell, they knew was up in the tower. They're about the two most important things for this country, because they gave us our liberty in the first place, and they set down the guidelines to keep that liberty. So this bell came to represent them, and in 1839 got its name, the Liberty Bell. It mostly got its name because it's right there on the side of the bell, the word liberty, coming from the book of Leviticus. And as this bell became important as a symbol of liberty, people started to come and see this bell after it cracked. 140 odd years ago, people started to come and see it. People much like yourselves. When they got here, much like yourselves, they wanted to know something about what they were looking at. So a lot of people tried to write about this bell. And they wrote articles in newspapers, articles in magazines. And as this bell became popular, they wanted to make it a very patriotic symbol. So they wrote songs and stories and poems about this bell, and told about some of the wonderful stories about this bell. Unfortunately, as all these wonderful stories were coming out, a lot of them weren't necessarily true because they didn't necessarily know facts, so they would sort of make things up that sounded patriotic. Therefore, a lot of legends were born concerning this bell. You might have heard, for example, that it first cracked tolling for the death of Chief Justice John Marshall in 1835. That story might or might not be true. We're not sure. That story didn't really come around until the 1870s. Of all the legends about the bell, however, my personal favorite is one that said that a guy by the name of Davy Crockett is the one who repaired the crack there. Now, that's funny just on one level. It's even funnier when you think about the fact that he'd been dead about 10 years before they even did the work on the bell. But those legends, though we might look back on them saying how humorous they might be, also were very helpful to this bell because they helped enhance this bell's image, helped to make this bell kind of folk hero. Where a folk hero would have tall tales written about him, guys like Paul Bunyan or even Davy Crockett. This bell has those same sort of things about it, so it was treated like a folk hero. And people came to see this bell from all over the country, and also the bell traveled around the country. 7 different occasions, it went to other cities to be put on display. And while it was traveling to those other cities, it went by train, traveled on a flatbed train car. And while it was on that train, people came out to see it. They knew it was going to be passing at a certain time, so they'd go out and they'd wait beside the train tracks, in the middle of nowhere maybe. Maybe it was night, maybe it was even raining. But they would wait out there just to see this bell when it was going past on a train. And when they saw it, they would cheer and ring bells and shoot off cannons. I think even a regular hero's welcome just when it was going past, because it was very important to them. And into this century, that same feeling continued about this bell. World Wars I and II, for example, this bell was used symbolically to support the war effort. If you were a hero or a famous person, you might go around and actually give speeches to support the war. This bell just gave its own presence. In World War I, Liberty loans, Liberty bonds were sold to gain money to support the war. They were kind of savings bond. This bell was used to advertise and sell them. In World War II, you might have seen posters or films with this bell portrayed with a big V for victory in front of it. Again, victory and liberty represented there to support the war effort. So it was very important in that role. And also, like any famous person, like any hero, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, this bell has appeared on coins and postage stamps, even in television advertising, because it is very well known. People around the world know it. We still get 8,000 or 10,000 people a day here to see this bell in Philadelphia, because it is still a very important symbol. As you saw at the beginning, a lot of people raise their hands saying they've been here before, and they're back again to see it. So it's still continuing to draw people in. And what they're coming for is not the fact that this is an old bell or a cracked bell, but that this is the Liberty Bell. That's what makes it so special. Just in closing, if you think of the song, My Country 'Tis of Thee, very famous song, a very patriotic song, one that a lot of children learn in school. There's a line in that song, "Let freedom ring." And that's the most important thing this bell does. It lets freedom and liberty ring out for the people who come in, and that's why it remains a kind of folk hero to people all over the world today. Now, I'm sure you're all going to want to come up and get a close look at the bell, and I'm
Ooh, how much was Canadian money on there?
This is the Christ Church Cemetery burial place of Benjamin Franklin.